In the pitch-black waters of the Gulf Coast, 7 heavily armed pirates thought they'd found an easy target. A lone fisherman anchored 50 miles from shore. They had automatic weapons and flawless record of 23 successful hijackings. But they were about to make the deadliest mistake of their lives. Mike Harrison wasn't just another fisherman. For 15 years, he was the most lethal Navy SEAL operator in the Pacific Fleet, with confirmed kills in 9 countries across 3 continents. His call sign was Reaper, because his targets never lived to see him coming. Now, as pirate vessels emerge from the darkness, Mike calmly checks his concealed arsenal. These waters have been his hunting ground for 6 months, each attack carefully studied, each pattern mapped. Tonight, the hunters are about to become prey. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun painted the Gulf waters in shades of amber as Mike Harrison completed his 3rd perimeter check of the day. Old habits died hard. His weathered fishing boat, the Seahawk, might look like any other commercial vessel, but 15 years of special operations had taught him that survival depends on the details others miss. At the helm, he maintained a precise reading of wind speed, water depth, and approaching vessels, data that most fishermen tracked casually. But Mike monitored with military precision. His logbook contained more than just catch numbers and weather patterns. Each entry included detailed observations of passing ships, unusual radio traffic, and potential surveillance vessels. Mike's fingers traced the worn teak railing as he moved. With calculated efficiency through his morning routine, every piece of equipment on deck had been strategically placed for quick access. Fishing nets doubled as emergency restraints. Seemingly decorative cleats were reinforced to serve as anchor points for tactical maneuvers. Even his bait coolers had false bottoms, concealing equipment that hadn't seen daylight since his last mission. Approaching vessel, bearing 270, range 12 nautical miles, he murmured to himself, tracking a blip on his radar. His voice carried the quiet authority of someone used to commanding elite teams in whispered tones. The vessel was maintaining a steady course, probably legitimate commercial traffic, but Mike logged it anyway. Pattern recognition had saved his life more times than he could count. The gentle roll of the waves masked the fact that the Seahawk's hull had been subtly modified. Reinforced compartments, additional fuel capacity, and specialized communication equipment turned the humble fishing boat into something far more formidable. Mike had chosen every modification carefully, building a floating fortress that looked utterly ordinary to untrained eyes. His satellite phone chirped, a specific tone that identified the caller without requiring him to look. "Morning, Commander." "Chen," Mike answered, using his former superior's rank out of ingrained respect. "Still fishing in contested waters, Mike?" Chen's voice carried a mix of concern and knowing amusement. They both knew Mike hadn't chosen this location for the yellowfin. "Tuna. Best catches come with a little risk," Mike replied, their practiced code establishing a secure conversation. "Any weather warnings I should know about?" "Storm systems building near your position. 7 distinct formations, heavily armed. They've hit 3 vessels in the past week, getting bolder." Chen's intel was always precise. As head of maritime security operations, he had access to classified reports of pirate activity throughout the Gulf. Mike allowed himself a small smile. "Appreciate the forecast, Commander. I'll keep my weather eye open." "You could have taken that security consultant position, you know. Nice office in Virginia, regular hours, no one trying to hijack your coffee breaks." "We both know I'd last about 2 days behind a desk." Mike's response was light, but they both understood the deeper truth. After what happened in the Strait of Malacca, after losing half his team to an intelligence leak, retirement hadn't been an option. It had been a tactical repositioning. The conversation ended with their usual minimal goodbye. Mike returned to his methodical preparation, checking equipment that no ordinary fisherman would carry. His fingers traced the hidden compartment beneath the navigation station, confirming that his specialized gear remained easily accessible. Radio chatter filled the background, a mix of fishing vessels and commercial traffic. Mike monitored each, transmission with practiced ease, his trained ear picking up subtle indicators that most would miss. Slight variations in background noise, inconsistencies in shipping manifestos, course changes that didn't match reported destinations. By mid-morning, the sun had burned away the last traces of dawn mist. Mike's fishing lines were properly set, maintaining his cover as he tracked multiple vessels through his high-resolution binoculars. Each sweep of the horizon was precise, systematic, drawing on thousands of hours of combat surveillance. His sati. Phone chirped again. Different tone, different contact. Go for Mike. 3 more boats hit last night. Sarah Chen's voice was tense. The commander's daughter had followed her father into maritime operations, but worked the intelligence side. They're escalating, Mike. Getting more aggressive. 2 crew members in the hospital. Location? His response was clipped, professional. Grid Sector 7, about 40 miles southwest of your current position. She paused. Be careful out there. These aren't amateur pirates anymore. They've got military-grade weapons, tactical training. Mike's expression remained neutral, but his pulse quickened slightly. Grid Sector 7, exactly where he'd predicted they'd escalate to next. His carefully planned trap was about to be tested. Thanks for the heads up, he replied. Keep your channels open tonight. Might be some interesting chatter coming your way. Sarah's silence spoke volumes. She knew Mike well enough to read between the lines. You're not just fishing, are you? Always fishing, he answered. Just depends on what you're trying to catch. After ending the call, Mike completed another circuit of his vessel. Every movement was measured, efficient, born from years of operating in environments where wasted motion could mean death. His boat was more than just his livelihood. It was a carefully constructed staging ground for an operation 6 months in the making. The pirates had started small, hitting local fishing boats, stealing cargo, escalating to bigger targets. Now they were assaulting commercial vessels with military precision, using tactics that Mike recognized from his own training. Someone was backing them, equipping them, transforming random thugs into a coordinated tactical force. Tonight, they would enter his carefully prepared kill zone, thinking they'd found another easy target. Tonight, 15 years of special operations. Experience would remind them why certain waters are best left undisturbed. The sun climbed higher as Mike Harrison, former Navy SEAL, continued his patient preparation. To any observer, he was just another fisherman checking his gear, just another potential victim waiting to be found. Sometimes, he reflected, the deadliest weapon isn't the one you can see. Sometimes, it's the trap that looks exactly like what you're hunting for. The afternoon sun beat down on the Gulf as Mike studied the encrypted report on his satellite tablet. 3 commercial vessels hijacked in the past week, all following the same pattern. Professional boarding teams, military-grade weapons, precision, timing. These weren't ordinary pirates. They were operators. Latest victim was the Maersk Voyager. Sarah's voice crackled through his secure line. Crew reported multiple boats, coordinated approach from different vectors. They knew exactly where the ship's blind spots were. Mike zoomed in on the incident photos. The boarding points had been chosen with tactical precision, exploiting structural vulnerabilities that only someone with specialized training would recognize. They're getting cocky, he observed, leaving behind shell casings from restricted ammunition, Russian-made military spec. That's not all, Sarah continued. We found traces of specialized climbing gear, the kind used in maritime special operations. Someone's giving these pirates serious hardware and advanced training. Through his binoculars, Mike tracked a cargo ship passing 5 miles to his starboard. Its course would take it through the pirates' preferred hunting grounds just after sunset, right on schedule. Your father know you're sharing classified intel with a civilian fisherman? Sarah's laugh carried a sharp edge. Dad knows exactly what you're doing out there, Mike. Why do you think our patrol boats are conveniently absent from Grid Sector 7 tonight? Mike allowed himself a small smile. Commander Chen had always understood the value of giving pirates enough rope to hang themselves. How's the investigation into the Malacca Strait incident going? Sarah's silence spoke volumes. The ambush that had cost Mike half his SEAL team remained officially unsolved. Still dead ends, she finally answered. But there's something interesting about these pirates. They're using some of the same communications protocols we saw in Malacca, very specific encryption. Mike's pulse quickened slightly, but his voice remained steady. Send me the technical data. Might help me identify their vessels if I spot any suspicious radio traffic. The real message went unspoken. For 2 years, Mike had hunted for the leak that had compromised his team's position in Malacca. Now, pieces were starting to align. The specialized tactics, the restricted weapons, the familiar communication patterns. Someone was recycling old operations for new purposes. His radar pinged, marking another vessel entering his observation zone. Through his high-powered scope, he noted details that would escape casual observation. The boat's draft was too deep for its apparent size, suggesting hidden cargo. Its antenna array was military-grade, masked by fishing equipment. Possible scout. In boat, bearing 145, he reported, making preliminary runs, mapping commercial traffic patterns. Sarah's keyboard clicked rapidly. Confirmed. We're tracking 3 more vessels with similar profiles, moving into adjacent grids. They're setting up for something big. Mike watched the scout boat adjust its course, maintaining perfect station-keeping despite the rolling swells. That kind of precision handling required extensive training. His mind flashed back to similar operations he'd run, identifying target vessels for coordinated assaults. They're not just hitting targets of opportunity anymore, he noted. They're establishing a kill zone, channeling commercial traffic into predictable routes. Just like Malacca, Sarah's voice was tight. Same tactical playbook. The parallel wasn't coincidental. Someone was using his own tactics against civilian vessels, turning techniques developed for counter-terrorism into tools for organized piracy. The thought made his jaw clench. His boat's radio crackled with routine commercial traffic, but Mike's trained ear caught subtle irregularities. Coded phrases embedded in normal transmissions, position reports that didn't quite match AIS tracking. Data. The pirates were coordinating in plain sight, using methods that maritime authorities weren't equipped to recognize. Your backup exit route is still clear, Sarah informed him. Coast Guard Cutter Davidson can reach you in 40 minutes if things go sideways. Mike checked his watch, calculating sunset times and tidal patterns. Won't be necessary. Everything's proceeding according to plan. That's what worries me, Sarah replied. These aren't amateurs, Mike. They've hit 23 vessels without taking a single casualty. Whatever you're planning has been in motion for 6 months, he finished. Trust the process, Sarah. Sometimes you have to let the enemy think they have the advantage. After ending the transmission, Mike completed another security sweep of his vessel. Everything was in place, carefully positioned for what was coming. His trained eye noted details that would matter when the action started. Ammunition caches, disguised as tool storage, tactical gear hidden in plain sight, emergency medical equipment ready for rapid access. The scout boat made another pass, closer this time. Testing his reactions, evaluating his vessel's apparent vulnerabilities. Mike played his role perfectly, just another fisherman checking his lines, unaware of being observed. His apparent obliviousness was calculated to draw them in, encourage, overconfidence. His satellite phone vibrated, Commander Chen's priority signal. Weather report confirmed. The commander's voice was crisp. 7 vessels, heavily armed, converging on your position after sunset. Last chance to call this off. Mike watched the sun touch the horizon, painting the water in shades of blood red. With respect, sir, we both know that's not an option, not after Malacca. Chen's sigh carried years of operational experience. Just remember your training, Reaper. Sometimes the best way to win is to not play their game. Oh, I remember, Mike replied softly. That's exactly what I'm counting on. The commander's words triggered another memory. A night, much like this one, when overconfidence had led his team into a perfectly prepared trap. Tonight, he would return that lesson with interest. Darkness crept across the Gulf as Mike Harrison made his final preparations. The pirates would come soon, expecting to find a defenseless fisherman. Instead, they would discover why some predators are best left undisturbed. The hunt was about to begin. Night fell across the Gulf like a thick blanket, bringing with it the kind of darkness that turns familiar shapes into lurking threats. Mike's night vision gear revealed what his fishing boat spotlights deliberately missed. 3 vessels converging. On his position, running dark. His radio crackled. Fishing vessel Seahawk. This is cargo ship Meridian. Be advised we're picking up multiple small craft on radar, your vicinity. The warning was standard procedure, though Mike noted the slight tremor in the radio operator's voice. The Meridian's crew had witnessed enough recent pirate attacks to recognize the pattern. Appreciated, Meridian, Mike responded, maintaining his role. Just a lone fisherman out here. Sure, they're just passing through. The approaching boats were professional. No engine noise, minimal wake, using the light chop to mask their radar. Signatures. Through thermal imaging, Mike counted 7 heat signatures on the lead vessel, 4 each on the flanking boats, all showing the distinctive heat patterns of body armor and tactical gear. His sat phone vibrated. They're jamming commercial radio frequencies, Sarah reported. Same pattern as the Maersk Voyager attack. You've got maybe 10 minutes before. And they're in range. Mike's pulse remained steady as muscle memory took over. His movements were efficient, unhurried, as he activated countermeasures that no fishing boat should possess. Signal scramblers came online. Tactical frequencies cleared. Of interference, hidden cameras tracked the pirates' approach from multiple angles. Going dark, he informed Sarah, his voice dropping to the whispered tone of combat operations. Maintain observation protocols. The first indication of trouble came exactly as he'd predicted. A spotlight stabbed through the darkness, illuminating his deck. A voice boomed across the water in heavily accented English. Fishing vessel, stop your engines. Prepare to be boarded for safety inspection. Mike allowed himself a grim smile. The pirates were using standard maritime law enforcement procedures as cover, a tactic he'd employed himself during counter-terrorism operations. He triggered his boat's emergency transponder, but not the civilian frequency the pirates would be monitoring. This signal, on a classified bandwidth, would tell Sarah exactly how events unfolded. "This is the Seahawk," he responded, letting anxiety creep into his voice. "I'm a registered U.S. fishing vessel in international waters. Please identify yourself." The pirate vessels moved with tactical precision, establishing a triangular containment formation. Their approach showed extensive training, minimizing weapon profiles, maintaining overlapping fields of fire, using his own boat's blind spots against him. "Heave to and prepare for boarding," the voice commanded. "This is your only warning." Through his thermal scope, Mike watched armed men taking positions along the pirates' gunnels. Their weapon handling and stance betrayed military training. These weren't common criminals. They were operators working under new management. He kept his hands visible as the lead vessel drew alongside, letting them see an apparently frightened fisherman. The boarding team's initial rush was textbook, 4 men across in synchronized movement, weapons covering every angle. "On your knees," the team leader barked. "Hands behind your head!" Mike complied, noting details that confirmed his suspicions. The pirates' tactical gear was top-grade military issue. Their weapons bore serial numbers that had been professionally obscured. Even their bootprints on his deck showed the distinctive pattern of specialized maritime operations footwear. "Check. Below," the leader ordered in Russian, clearly not expecting Mike to understand. "Find the manifest tubes. They'll be hidden in the usual places." Manifest tubes. Mike's mind raced. They weren't here for random theft. They were looking for something specific. The same thing they'd been searching for across 23 other vessels. Two pirates moved toward his cabin, while others maintained weapon coverage. Their formation was precise but focused entirely on conventional threats. They weren't prepared for the countermeasures built into every inch of his vessel. Mike's fingers moved fractionally, pressing hidden contact points in his deck. Throughout the boat, concealed systems activated. Specialized sensors tracked the pirates' movements. Electromagnetic scramblers disabled their more advanced equipment. Every step they took was recorded, analyzed, and transmitted on frequencies their jammers couldn't touch. "No crew?" one pirate asked in accented English. "You work this boat alone?" "Can't afford help these days," Mike answered, letting fear make his voice shake. "Times are tough in the fishing business." The leader studied him through tactical goggles. "You're a long way from normal fishing grounds. These waters can be dangerous." "Just like Malacca. Search everything," the leader ordered. "Tear it apart if you have to. Those tubes have to be here somewhere." Mike watched them through half-closed eyes, noting each man's position. The pirates were focused entirely on their search, confident that one frightened fisherman posed no threat. That confidence was about to become a fatal mistake. His fingers brushed another hidden contact point. Throughout the boat, concealed systems shifted to combat protocols. In the darkness beyond his running lights, Sarah would be watching through multiple surveillance feeds, documenting everything. The pieces were falling into place. Now he just had to survive long enough to spring the trap that would reveal who was really behind it all. The hunt was about to enter its next phase. The pirates' boots thundered across Mike's deck as they tore through his vessel, searching for phantom cargo tubes. Each impact sent vibrations through hidden sensors, mapping their movements with military precision. Mike remained on his knees, head bowed, every muscle coiled with controlled tension. "Nothing in the forward hold," a searcher reported in Russian. "Just fishing gear." The leader's frustration showed in his stance. "Check again. Those tubes were tracked to this vessel. They have to be here." Mike's trained eye caught subtle details that others would miss. The way the pirates favored their right sides, indicating concealed backup weapons. The distinctive bulge of ceramic armor beneath their tactical vests. The slight delay in their radio communications. Evidence of sophisticated encryption. His mind flashed back to advanced combat training. Rule 1. Let the enemy establish their pattern before disrupting it. The pirates had split into 3 groups, 2 searching below, 3 on deck, 2 watching the perimeter. Standard tactical dispersal, but it meant they weren't supporting each other effectively. A burst of radio static made the leader turn. "Sir, thermal's showing weird readings. Some kind of interference." Of course there was interference. Every piece of electronics on Mike's boat had been carefully modified to emit specific signals. Signals that were slowly degrading the pirates. High-tech gear, while appearing like normal equipment failures. "Check the engine room again," the leader ordered. "Those manifest tubes are our priority." Mike's fingers brushed another hidden contact. Throughout the boat, concealed systems shifted to combat settings. Specialized plates in the deck became signal conductors. Ordinary fishing gear transformed into tactical anchoring points. Even the boat's lighting was part of a sophisticated system designed to disorient intruders. "You're wasting your time," Mike said quietly, letting steel enter his voice for the first time. "The tubes aren't here. The leader spun, weapon raised at the change in Mike's tone. "What did you say?" 23 ships hit in 6 months, Mike continued, all carrying special cargo in marked tubes. But you never found what you were really looking for, did you? The leader's posture shifted subtly. You know nothing. I know you're using Russian Spetsnaz boarding tactics. I know your communications encryption is based on defunct Chinese military protocols. And I know you're working for someone who's got access to classified shipping intelligence. The other pirates turned at his words, weapons centering on this suddenly dangerous target. But Mike wasn't finished. What I don't know, he added softly, is whether you're the same team that hit the Malacca Strait 2 years ago. The one that ambushed a SEAL unit using inside information. The leader's eyes widened fractionally behind his tactical goggles. Who are you? Mike's smile was cold as Arctic water. Just a fisherman, but you might know me better by another name. His voice dropped to a whisper. They used to call me Reaper. Recognition hit the leader like a physical blow. His weapon snapped up, but Mike was already moving. Years of training compressed into milliseconds as he executed a role that brought him behind a modified cargo winch. "Kill him!" the leader screamed, switching to Russian. "Kill him now!" But Mike had already activated his full tactical systems. The deck lights shifted to strobing patterns designed to disrupt night vision. Hidden speakers emitted frequencies that played havoc with electronic equipment. Every advantage the pirates thought they had began to dissolve. Through his boat's surveillance system, he tracked heat signatures scrambling for position. The pirates were well trained, but they'd walked into a trap designed by someone with decades of special operations experience. His hand found the first of several concealed weapons caches. Time to remind these pirates why some targets were better left alone. The real battle was about to begin. The first burst of gunfire shattered the night, rounds impacting where Mike had been seconds before, but he was already moving, using his boat's architecture against the pirates in ways they couldn't anticipate. Every shadow had been measured, every angle calculated during months of preparation. "Spread out," the leader commanded. "He's using prepared positions." Mike's modified deck lights cast disorienting patterns across the boat's surface, creating shifting shadows that made accurate targeting impossible. The pirates' night vision gear, disrupted by his countermeasures, now worked against them, creating false images and ghost signatures. 2 pirates moved toward his last known position, maintaining professional spacing. Their weapons tracked smoothly, showing extensive combat training, but they were fighting on his territory now. A subtle click made one pirate freeze. "Sir, he's activated something." The deck plates beneath their feet had become electrical conductors, sending disorienting pulses through their tactical gear. Communications equipment crackled with interference. Even their specialized weapons started displaying erratic behavior as electromagnetic fields disrupted targeting systems. Mike's voice seemed to come from everywhere at once, his boat's hidden speakers creating acoustic confusion. "Nice equipment you're carrying, special forces grade, recently manufactured. Someone's invested a lot in your team." A pirate fired at a moving shadow, but hit only air. Mike's years of CQB training guided every movement. In close quarters combat, knowledge of terrain trumped superior numbers. "Your tactics are interesting too," he continued, letting his voice drift across the deck. "That boarding formation, straight out of the classified Maritime Operations Manual. Chapter 7, if I remember correctly." The leader's response was immediate. "Gas! Use the gas!" Chemical grenades clattered across the deck, spewing thick smoke. But Mike had anticipated this too. Hidden ventilation systems activated, creating specific air currents that turned their smokescreen against them. "That's Russian CS gas," Mike observed calmly. "Military grade, restricted export, the kind that was used in the Malacca Strait ambush." His words hit harder than bullets. The pirates' movements became less coordinated, uncertainty creeping into their tactical precision. They were professionals, but they were also realizing that their target knew far too much about their operation. "Command! We need backup!" the leader barked into his radio. But only static answered. Mike's jamming systems had isolated them completely. Through concealed cameras, he watched them adjust their tactics. They switched to infrared, trying to track his heat signature. But Mike's years of special operations experience had taught him dozens of ways to defeat thermal imaging. "Your equipment, your tactics, your communications protocols," Mike's voice echoed across the deck. "All exactly like Malacca. Same playbook, same sources, same leaked intelligence." A pirate spun, firing. At another shadow. "Where is he?" "The real question," Mike continued, "is whether you know who you're really working for, whether you understand what those manifest tubes really contain." The leader's voice carried an edge of desperation. "Kill him! Find him! And kill him!" But his team's coordination was breaking down. In the confusion of shifted lights and contradictory sensors, they began to separate. Tactical discipline gave way to increasing uncertainty. Mike moved like a ghost through his vessel's shadows, positioning himself for what came next. Each pirate's location was marked on his mental map, their movements predicted by years of combat. "Experience. Last chance," he offered, letting his voice carry across the deck. "Surrender now. Tell me who hired you, and you might survive the night." The leader's laugh was harsh. "You think you can threaten us? We're not common pirates. We're expendable assets," Mike cut him off. "Just like the team that hit the Malacca Strait. Just like all the others who died keeping their employers' secrets." His words struck home. The pirates' movement showed the first signs of real fear. They were trained operators, but they were beginning to understand that they'd walked into something far more dangerous than a simple hijacking. The game of shadows was about to end, and Mike Harrison, the operator they once called Reaper, was ready to show them exactly why he'd earned that name. Mike reached the first of his primary weapons caches, concealed behind a false panel in the pilot house. His fingers moved with practiced efficiency, muscle memory taking over as he assembled equipment that no fishing boat should contain. TD, suppressed Mk-23 felt familiar in his hands, the same model he'd carried during his last mission in Malacca. Beside it lay cutting-edge combat gear carefully sourced through old military contacts, everything chosen for maximum effectiveness in maritime operations. "They're trying to flank the port side," Sarah's voice whispered through his hidden earpiece. Their encrypted channel remained clear despite the pirates' jamming. "Thermal shows them moving in pairs." Mike's mind flashed back to his SEAL training, Rule 3 of close quarters battle. Let the enemy think they're executing their plan while you're actually controlling their movement. The pirates' attempted flanking maneuver was playing directly into his prepared kill zones. "Sir," one of the pirates called out in Russian, "the boat systems are acting strange. Nothing's responding normally." Of course they weren't. Every electronic system on the Seahawk had been modified for combat operations. The navigation equipment contained military-grade radar. The fish finder doubled as sonar. Even the depth gauges had been replaced with tactical monitoring systems. Mike moved silently to his next position, retrieving specialized equipment from another hidden compartment. Custom flashbangs designed for shipboard use. Concentrated CS, gas that would neutralize their protective gear. Tools developed through years of maritime counter-terrorism operations. "Getting more movement on your starboard side," Sarah reported. "They're attempting to establish crossfire positions." Through concealed cameras, Mike watched the pirates deploy with professional precision. Their tactics would have been effective against any normal target, but the Seahawk was far from normal. His hand brushed a hidden panel, activating the next phase of his boat's defensive systems. Throughout the vessel, specialized sensors began tracking the pirates' movements with military accuracy. Every step they took was mapped, analyzed, and fed into tactical displays only he could see. "Something's wrong," The pirate leader muttered in Russian. This equipment, it's too sophisticated. Mike allowed himself a grim smile as he retrieved more gear. Body armor rated for maritime operations, combat webbing designed for shipboard mobility, equipment that represented the cutting edge of naval special warfare technology. His fingers traced the familiar shape of a suppressed Mk-13 rifle, the same weapon he'd used during countless classified operations. The weight was comforting, a reminder of missions that would never appear in any official record. The manifest tubes, Sarah's voice carried urgency. They've hit 23 ships looking for them. What makes these ones so special? Mike's mind raced as he completed his preparations. The pirates' desperation to find those specific tubes, their military-grade equipment, the leaked shipping intelligence, it all pointed to something bigger than simple piracy. "Sir," another pirate called out, "found something? Looks like a weapons cache, but it's empty." Of course it was empty. That cache was a decoy, designed to be discovered. The real arsenals remained hidden, waiting for the right moment. Through his tactical display, Mike tracked the pirates' increasing frustration. Their professional discipline was cracking as they encountered system after system designed to counter their equipment. Everything they thought gave them an advantage was being turned against them. His hand found another concealed compartment, this one containing specialized breaching charges, not the crude explosives pirates typically carried, but sophisticated devices used in classified operations, the kind that could turn any part of his boat into a tactical entry point. Multiple heat signatures converging on your position, Sarah warned. They're getting desperate. Mike moved like a shadow through his vessel's concealed passages. Every piece of equipment had been chosen for a specific purpose, every weapon selected based on years of combat experience. The Seahawk wasn't just a fishing boat with hidden weapons. It was a floating combat platform disguised as a civilian vessel. "Found another cache," a pirate shouted. "But these weapons, they're military prototypes. How?" The leader cut him off. "Focus! Find him! He has to be here somewhere." But Mike was already in position, his arsenal deployed with tactical precision. The pirates had come expecting to find a helpless fisherman. Instead, they'd encountered a fully equipped special operations platform commanded by someone who'd spent years preparing for exactly this scenario. The time for shadow games was ending. Now it was time to show these pirates exactly what kind of arsenal they'd walked into. The first explosion caught the pirates completely off guard. A precise charge, detonated remotely, sent their point man sprawling across the deck. Non-lethal but devastating, classic SEAL tactics. "Breaching charges," the leader shouted. "He's using our own playbook." Mike's voice carried across the chaos with calm authority. "Your formation is sloppy. Gap in your coverage at 30 degrees port, exactly where we hit that Chinese freighter in 19. The leader froze. Even through his tactical gear, Mike could see the recognition hit home. "Sierra 2, the pirate whispered. "That classified op off Singapore." "The same," Mike confirmed, letting his voice drift from another position. Four-man SEAL team against a heavily armed crew, almost like this situation, but in reverse. The pirates' weapons tracked the sound, but Mike was already moving. Their thermal imaging showed nothing but ghost signatures, heat decoys he'd planted hours earlier. "You were there," the leader continued, his voice carrying a mix of awe and fear. "Team commander, the one they called Reaper," Mike finished. "Because the targets never saw me coming, just like now." Another carefully placed charge detonated, driving the pirates away from one of their planned escape routes. Mike had studied their tactics for months, learning their patterns, anticipating their responses. "Command, we need immediate extraction." The leader barked into his radio, but only static answered. They were completely isolated. "Your communications encryption," Mike observed. "It's based on the same protocol we used in Sierra 2. Somebody did their homework." Somebody with access to classified naval intelligence. The leader's posture shifted subtly, professional recognition between operators. You're a long way from Special Operations, Commander, playing fisherman in contested waters. Not playing. Mike corrected. Hunting, just like you. The difference is, I know what's really in those manifest tubes you're chasing. A burst of gunfire shredded the darkness where Mike's voice had been, but he'd already changed positions, using his boat's architecture to stay 3 moves ahead. You don't know anything, the leader snarled, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. I know they're using you, Mike replied, just like they used that team in Malacca. How many of them survived after the mission, after they'd served their purpose? The pirates maintained their professional stance, but their movements had become more hesitant. Doubt was a weapon sharper than any blade. Think about it, Mike continued. The leaked intelligence, the classified protocols, the military-grade equipment. Someone's investing a lot to recover those tubes. Someone who doesn't mind sacrificing trained operators to keep their secret. Sir, one of the pirates warned, he's trying to get in our heads. But Mike could see his words hitting home. These weren't common criminals, they were professional operators. They understood the implications of what he was saying. Last chance, Mike offered. Professional courtesy from one operator to another. Stand down now, tell me who hired you, and we can end this before it gets messy. The leader's laugh was harsh. You think we fear Death Reaper? We're not some amateur crew you can intimidate? No, Mike agreed. You're professionals, which means you understand exactly what's about to happen. You've lost tactical advantage, communications, and half your specialized equipment. In about 30 seconds, you'll lose night vision capability too. As if on cue, the pirates' thermal imaging systems crackled with interference. Their sophisticated gear corrupted by Mike's. Countermeasures began to fail systematically. One last time. Mike's voice carried deadly certainty. Professional courtesy. Standing offer to surrender. The leader's response was immediate. A burst of automatic fire that shredded the night. But his shots found only empty air as Mike triggered. The next phase of his tactical systems, the real battle, was about to begin. Not between pirates and fishermen, but between professional operators on a battlefield that one had spent months preparing. Some would call it professional courtesy, giving them one last chance to surrender. But Mike knew better. Sometimes the greatest respect you can show an opponent is to treat them as the deadly threat they truly are. The pirates' next move revealed just how professional they really were. Synchronized flashbangs detonated across the deck, followed by a coordinated rush that would have overwhelmed any normal target. But Mike had trained for exactly this scenario. Specialized. Breaching charges, he noted calmly through his protective gear. Russian military issue, recently manufactured. Someone's giving you top-shelf equipment. The leader's response was to deploy their next level of tactical gear. Electronic warfare pods designed to disable security systems. Advanced signal jammers that could knock out communications. Equipment that cost more than most pirates would see in a lifetime. Your hardware's impressive, Mike commented, triggering. Countermeasures that turned their own technology against them. But your tactical doctrine is outdated. We rewrote those assault protocols after Malacca. Through his surveillance system, he watched them adjust their formation. Their movements showed the kind of coordination that only came from extensive special operations training. These men had worked together before, in situations that would never appear in official records. Command, target is displaying advanced tactical knowledge, the leader reported into his dead radio. Request immediate. He cut off, realizing their communications were completely blocked. Standard NATO encryption won't work here, Mike informed them. Neither will your Chinese backup channels. Amazing how much classified communications data gets leaked these days. A pirate deployed what looked like standard night vision gear. But Mike recognized the advanced targeting system built into the optics, prototype equipment that hadn't even been officially released to Special Forces units yet. "That's interesting," he observed. "Those targeting systems are still in development. Someone has very high-level military connections." The leader's curse carried genuine frustration. Every advantage they thought they had was being systematically neutralized. Every piece of advanced technology turned into a liability. "Sir," one of the pirates called out, "he's got some kind of hybrid defense system, military grade but heavily modified." "Of course it's modified," Mike replied. "Had to adapt it for maritime operations. Just like the system we used in Sierra. 2. The one that was supposedly destroyed after the mission. The pirates' movements became more cautious. Professional operators recognized when they were dealing with someone who knew their playbook better than they did. "You don't understand what you're interfering with," the leader warned. "This is bigger than you realize." "Oh, I understand," Mike's voice carried deadly certainty. "Those manifest tubes you're hunting, they're not just cargo, they're proof. Evidence of something that powerful people want to keep buried." Sarah's voice whispered in his ear. "Multiple boats approaching, high-speed tactical craft. Someone called in their backup." Mike had expected this. The pirates' support vessels had been holding back, waiting to see if the boarding team could handle the situation. Now they were committing their full force. 3 minutes until they're in range," Sarah reported. "Heavy weapons mounted on all approaching craft." Through his thermal imaging, Mike watched the pirates deploy their most sophisticated equipment. Yet, tactical gear that shouldn't exist outside of classified military operations, hardware that proved these men were just the tip of a much larger operation. "Last chance to surrender," the leader called out, confidence returning as reinforcements approached. "You're good, Reaper. Maybe the best, but you're still just one man." Mike's laugh carried genuine amusement. "You still think this is about combat capability? Take a good look at your tactical displays. Notice anything strange about the water temperature readings?" The pirates' hesitation was immediate. Professional operators recognized a trap when they saw one. "Those incoming boats," Mike continued casually, "they're running on autopilot, no heat signatures in the cockpits. Almost like someone hacked their navigation systems hours ago." The leader's curse was explosive. "All units hold position. Do not approach." But it was too late. The support vessels were already committed, running at full speed into a carefully prepared kill zone. Sometimes the deadliest weapon isn't the one you can see, it's the trap that's been waiting since before the battle began. The support vessel's autopilot systems activated Mike's carefully placed subsurface charges. Not enough to sink them, that would attract too much attention, but perfect for disabling engines and communications. Within seconds, 3 high-speed tactical craft drifted helplessly in the Gulf waters. "Command, we've lost contact with all support vessels," the leader reported into his dead radio, professional calm cracking slightly. "Primary target has some kind of advanced maritime warfare capability." Mike moved through his boat's shadows, assembling the pieces of a puzzle 2 years in the making. The pirates' equipment, their tactics, their desperate search for specific cargo, it all connected back to Malacca. "Your equipment's too good," he called out, letting his voice drift across the deck. "Top-grade military hardware, classified tactical systems, the kind of gear that requires special export licenses, almost like someone's building a private army." The leader's response was immediate, a burst of suppressed fire that showed his professional training. But Mike had already moved, using his boat's architecture to stay 3 steps ahead. "Sir," one of the pirates called out urgently, "found something in the navigation computer. These coordinates, they match the Malacca Strait incident." Mike allowed himself a grim smile. The planted data had done its job, confirming his suspicions. "Interesting coincidence. Same region where a SEAL team was ambushed after someone leaked. Their mission details. Same region where those manifest tubes first appeared. Sarah's voice whispered through his earpiece. "Mike, accessing satellite data now. Those support vessels, they're registered to a shell company. Same one that owned ships involved in illegal arms shipments last year." The pieces clicked into place. The military-grade equipment, the classified tactical data, the desperate search for specific cargo. This wasn't about simple piracy. It was about covering tracks that led to the highest levels of international arms trafficking. "Your employer's been busy," Mike observed, triggering another set of countermeasures that further degraded the pirates' sophisticated gear, building a private military force, using leaked intelligence to hijack shipments. Very professional. Operation. The leader's laugh carried genuine respect. "You've done your homework, Reaper. But you're still missing the bigger picture. Those manifest tubes, they're just the beginning." Through concealed cameras, Mike watched the pirates adjust their positions. Their movements showed the kind of tactical coordination that came from extensive covert operations training. These men weren't just hired guns. They were deep cover operators, working for someone with serious resources. "Think about it," the leader continued, his voice carrying the confidence of someone holding a winning hand. 23 ships hit. Military-grade hardware disappearing from secure shipments. Classified tactical data showing up in private hands. Someone's preparing for something big. Mike's mind raced. The pattern was becoming clear. Someone was systematically acquiring the equipment and intelligence needed to field a private military force. But why? What operation could require this level of preparation? "The Malacca ambush," he said slowly, pieces falling into place. It wasn't about eliminating a SEAL team. It was about testing new tactical protocols, using leaked intelligence to probe military response capabilities. Sarah's voice cut through his thoughts. "Mike, cross-referencing shipping manifests. Those tubes you're supposed to be carrying, they match serial numbers from a classified weapons development program, something called Project Shadowstep." The leader's silence confirmed Mike's suspicions. This went beyond arms trafficking. Someone was building a covert force using stolen military technology and classified tactical data. The kind of force that could operate completely off the grid, untraceable and deniable. "Your employer's ambitious," Mike commented, watching the pirates through thermal imaging, building a private army using stolen tech and leaked intelligence. But they made one mistake. They got sloppy trying to clean up loose ends. A pirate deployed another piece of specialized equipment, a tactical scanner designed to detect hidden weapons and surveillance systems. But Mike had anticipated this too. His boat's defensive measures created false readings, ghost signatures that led nowhere. "Sir," the operator reported, frustration evident, "can't get clean data. His countermeasures are military-grade but heavily modified, almost like they were designed specifically to defeat our equipment," the leader finished, "because he knew exactly what we'd be carrying." Mike triggered his next set of tactical systems, preparing for what would come next. The pirates were professional enough to recognize when they'd walked into a trap. Their only question now would be whether to retreat or commit fully to the attack. The leader's decision would reveal just how much their employer had at stake. Sometimes, the most dangerous moment in any operation is when your opponent realizes they've been playing your game all along. The leader's laugh suddenly shifted, carrying a new tone that made Mike's combat instincts flash red. "You really think we didn't know who you were, Commander Harrison? That we just happened to stumble onto your boat?" Mike's mind raced, reassessing every assumption he'd made. The pirates' sophisticated equipment, their tactical precision, their desperate search for manifest tubes that were never here. "The tubes were bait," he said slowly, pieces clicking into place. "You knew I'd be tracking pirate activity in these waters, knew I was still hunting for answers about Malacca." "Very good," the leader responded, his voice carrying professional appreciation, though I'd expect nothing less from the legendary Reaper. The man who led Team 6's most successful operations. the operator who never lost a target. Through his surveillance system, Mike watched the pirates shift into a new formation, one designed not to capture, but to contain. They weren't trying to find something on his boat. They were making sure he stayed on it. "Sir," Sarah's voice carried urgent warning. "Detecting multiple new vessel signatures, heavy ships running dark. They were waiting just over the horizon. The leaders next." Words confirmed Mike's worst fears. Those manifest tubes, they're safely locked away. The real target tonight was you, Commander, the one loose end from Malacca that couldn't be cleaned up through normal channels. Mike triggered secondary defensive systems, but the pirates had already disabled his primary countermeasures. They'd known exactly what they were facing, planned specifically for his tactics. 2 years hunting for answers, the leader continued, getting closer and closer to the truth. Did you really think they just let you keep digging? That sooner or later you wouldn't find something they couldn't afford to have found? Through thermal imaging, Mike watched larger vessels emerge from the darkness, military-grade ships running completely silent. The kind of hardware that shouldn't exist in private hands. Your investigation was getting expensive, the leader explained casually. 3 arms shipments rerouted, 2 covert operations compromised. Someone decided it was time to solve the Reaper problem permanently. Sarah's voice was tight with controlled panic. "Mike, those ships, they're reading like actual military vessels. Someone's got hardware way above private operator level." The pirates' formation suddenly made perfect sense. They weren't trying to board his boat anymore. They were holding him in position for something bigger. "Your reputation for thoroughness works against you," the leader observed. "They knew you'd keep hunting, keep digging until you found the truth. About Malacca, about Project Shadowstep, about how deep the corruption really goes." Mike's mind raced through options, each worse than the last. He'd prepared for pirates, for hijackers, for professional operators. But this was something else. A full military operation disguised as a private attack. "You're right about one thing," he said finally, letting steel enter his voice. "I never lost a target, never failed a mission. Want to know why?" The leader's response carried genuine curiosity. "Enlighten me, because I always prepared for the worst possible scenario, always assumed my enemy was smarter than they appeared." Mike's finger pressed a hidden contact point, activating systems that even Sarah didn't know about. Always had one last contingency plan. The night was about to become very interesting indeed. The largest vessel's running lights suddenly blazed to life, illuminating a military-grade patrol ship that shouldn't exist in civilian hands. But it wasn't the hardware that made Mike's blood run cold. It was the figure standing on the bridge. "Hello, Reaper?" A familiar voice crackled across all frequencies, breaking through his jamming systems. "Been a long time since Malacca, Anders." Mike's voice carried 2 years of contained fury. "Should have known you didn't die in that ambush. Too convenient." Colonel James Anders, former Special Operations Command, the man who had planned the Malacca mission, the officer who had personally selected Mike's team for what was supposed to be a routine interdiction. "Your tendency to survive inconvenient situations is becoming problematic," Anders observed casually. "Though I suppose I should have expected it. You always were my best student." Through his tactical display, Mike watched heavily armed teams deploy from Anders' vessel. Not pirates now, professional military operators moving with lethal precision. "You leaked those mission details," Mike said, pieces finally falling into place. "Used my team to test Project Shadowstep's capabilities. Your own men, Anders. We trusted you." "Sacrifices were necessary," Anders replied, his voice carrying no remorse. "The project needed real-world combat data. Your team's performance exceeded expectations, by the way, even in defeat." Sarah's voice cut through Mike's private channel. "Mike, those operators, they're using actual US military hardware. Current generation stuff that's supposed to be strictly controlled. The manifest tubes," Mike said slowly, understanding dawning. They're not just carrying classified data, they're proof of what you've been doing, selling military hardware, leaking tactical protocols, building a private army. Anders' laugh carried genuine amusement. Still putting the pieces together even now. This is why you were always my favorite operator, Mike. That relentless, analytical mind, never stopping until you see the whole picture. The approaching teams moved with synchronized precision, establishing interlocking fields of fire. They weren't taking any chances with the legendary Reaper. Project Shadow Step was never about weapons development, Mike continued, mind racing. It was about creating a separate force, military hardware, classified tactics, deniable operators, everything needed for operations that governments can't officially conduct. The future of warfare, Anders confirmed. No oversight, no accountability, no political constraints, pure military efficiency. The kind of force we always dreamed of commanding. Mike's fingers moved across hidden controls, activating his final defensive systems. You're insane, Anders. The kind of power you're building, it can't be controlled. That's where you're wrong, old friend. It can be controlled. It just requires the right person in command, someone with vision, someone willing to make the necessary sacrifices. The tactical teams were almost in position now. Through thermal imaging, Mike counted at least 30 operators, professional soldiers equipped with hardware that matched his own SEAL team's gear. Last, a chance, Reaper, Anders offered, almost gentle. Join us. Help build something greater than any official military could achieve. Your skills, your experience, they're being wasted playing fisherman. Mike's response was ice cold. You killed my team, Anders, used us like test targets. Some things can't be forgiven. Unfortunate, Anders sighed, but predictable. You always did cling to outdated concepts like loyalty. Terminal teams, you have weapons free. End this. Sarah's voice carried urgent warning. Mike, multiple weapons. Powering up, whatever you're planning. Time to show them my last surprise, Mike replied softly, fingers hovering over the final activation sequence. Sometimes the deadliest trap is the one your enemy thinks they've already sprung. The night was about to become legendary. The Gulf weather changed with explosive suddenness, as if nature itself sensed the coming violence. Dark clouds rolled in from the southeast, bringing with them winds that turned the calm waters treacherous. Storm front moving faster than predicted, Sarah reported, urgency in her voice. Wave height increasing. These conditions are going to make their boarding attempts more dangerous. Mike tracked Anders' tactical teams through the growing chaos. Their movements were becoming more hesitant. As the deck pitched beneath their feet, even professional operators struggled when maritime conditions turned hostile. Having trouble maintaining position, one team leader reported through channels, Mike's systems had already compromised. Sea state making precision shooting nearly impossible. Lightning split the sky, illuminating Anders' patrol ship in stark relief. The vessel was too large to be seriously affected by the building storm, but its smaller support craft were already struggling. Weather works both ways, Anders' voice carried command authority. Push through it, he's just one man. But Mike had spent months preparing for exactly these conditions. Every modification to his boat, every tactical system had been designed to function in the worst weather the Gulf could produce. Through thermal imaging, he watched the approaching teams fight against wind and waves. Their military training showed in how they adapted, but they were still operating in his environment, under conditions he had chosen. Barometric pressure dropping fast, Sarah warned. This isn't a normal storm system. Something about the temperature. Gradients. Mike allowed himself a grim smile. Weather modification isn't just for governments anymore. Amazing what you can do with the right equipment and precise timing. The tactical team's sophisticated gear began to malfunction as rain, and salt spray penetrated supposedly waterproof seals. Their night vision struggled against lightning strikes that turned darkness into blinding day. Sir, A team leader called out, professional calm, cracking. Lost contact with second support vessel. Wave actions exceeding safe operational parameters. Anders' response carried growing frustration. Maintain formation. Don't let him use this storm as cover. But the weather was only part of Mike's plan. As the team struggled against deteriorating conditions, hidden systems throughout his boat shifted to storm protocols. Equipment that appeared ordinary transformed for combat operations. They're trying to compensate, Sarah reported, tracking thermal signatures through the chaos. Switching to all-weather tactical gear. But these conditions... Lightning crashed again. Closer now, the thunder almost immediate. The storm was centered directly over them, turning the Gulf into a battleground where nature itself seemed to take sides. Time to show them why you don't hunt the Reaper in his own waters, Mike said softly, activating the next phase of his defense. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one trying to kill you, it's the environment itself. The night was about to teach Anders' men a lesson about warfare that no amount of training could prepare them for. Anders' teams launched their assault with military precision, fighting through the storm with professional determination. Multiple grappling lines shot across the churning water, securing themselves to Mike's boat despite the heaving waves. All teams initiate synchronized breach, Anders commanded. I don't care about the weather, end this now. Mike watched through his tactical display as operators began their approach. Despite the terrible conditions, their movement showed years of maritime combat training. These weren't pirates anymore. They were elite soldiers executing a carefully planned operation. First team crossing, Sarah reported tensely. They're using specialized maritime gear, military prototype stuff that's not even officially deployed yet. Lightning illuminated the scene in strobing flashes as operators fought their way across the lines. Their tactics were perfect, their timing precise, but Mike had prepared for this exact scenario. Impressive equipment, he observed, triggering his first set of countermeasures. Shame about the copper content in those grappling lines. The next, lightning strike found a perfect conductor in the attacker's metal gear. Electricity arced across the water, not enough to kill, but more than sufficient to disrupt their assault. Professional operators tumbled into the churning Gulf. Multiple men in the water, a team leader shouted. We need immediate recovery! But the storm made rescue operations nearly impossible. Waves the size of small buildings now separated the tactical teams from their support vessels. The very weather that Anders had dismissed as an inconvenience had become a deadly factor. Push. Through it! Anders commanded, real anger creeping into his voice. He's trapped on that boat, no way out! Mike's fingers danced across hidden controls, activating systems that transformed his vessel's architecture. Handholds became electrical deterrents. Boarding points concealed automated defense mechanisms. Every apparent vulnerability masked a carefully prepared trap. Second team deploying from the stern, Sarah warned. They're using some kind of specialized storm gear. Through thermal imaging, Mike tracked the new attackers. Their equipment was even more advanced, designed specifically for extreme maritime conditions. Anders had planned for everything, almost everything. Let's remind them why special operations teams fear environment more than enemy, Mike said quietly, triggering his boat's full defensive protocol. Hidden pumps activated throughout the vessel, altering its water ballast in precise ways. The boat's motion became unpredictable, making boarding nearly impossible even for trained operators. Every wave that crashed across the deck carried carefully calculated force. Can't maintain secure positions, a team leader reported urgently. The deck's becoming a death trap. Anders' voice carried growing desperation. Push through, all teams. Concentrate fire on. But a massive wave chose that moment to crash across the tactical frequencies, drowning out his commands. Nature itself seemed to have taken sides in this battle. Mike moved through his boat's shadows, preparing for the final phase. The storm was reaching its peak, turning the Gulf into a battlefield where skill and equipment meant less than experience and preparation. The real fight was about to begin. The first direct hit took out Mike's primary radar array. Precision shooting from Anders' vessel, using the storm's lightning flashes for targeting. Through emergency systems, he watched multiple tactical teams regrouping for another coordinated assault. Main defensive grid compromised, Sarah reported urgently. They're adapting to the weather conditions, using specialized maritime assault protocols. A second shot destroyed his portside communications array. Anders wasn't taking chances anymore. He was systematically eliminating Mike's technological advantages. You built quite the impressive system here. Anders's voice carried professional appreciation. But you forgot one thing, old friend. I'm the one who taught you how to design tactical defenses. Through damaged sensors, Mike tracked more teams moving into position. Their formation was perfect, using the storm's rhythm to mask their approach. These men had trained specifically for this type of operation. Backup power failing, Sarah warned. Whatever you're planning, stay online as long as you can, Mike replied, mind racing through options. I need 3 more minutes. His boat's automated defenses were failing one by one, precision fire from Anders' vessel eliminating key systems. The storm's fury actually worked against him now, preventing effective repairs. Almost disappointing, Anders commented as another defensive array exploded. I expected more from the legendary Reaper, the man who never failed a mission. Mike moved through his darkened vessel, salvaging what equipment he could. Years of combat experience had taught him that sometimes the most effective plan was the one your enemy would never expect you to attempt. Multiple hull breaches, Sarah reported, her voice barely audible through failing communications. Taking on water in compartments 3 and 4. A massive wave crashed across the deck, nearly sweeping away 2 of Anders' operators. But their training showed as they maintained position, pressing the attack despite impossible conditions. Final teams in position, a tactical leader reported, ready for terminal assault. Mike reached his emergency command center, fingers flying across backup controls. Most of his sophisticated defensive systems were gone now, destroyed by precise fire or storm damage. But he had one option left. Target's vessel showing critical damage, an operator reported to Anders. Hull integrity failing. She's going down, sir. Mike allowed himself a grim smile as he entered final commands into his remaining systems. Sometimes the most effective tactical decision was the one that seemed completely insane. Sarah, he said quietly, initiate Protocol 0, full encryption, no acknowledgement. Static was his only answer. Communications were completely down now. He was on his own. Through the chaos of wind and waves, he heard Anders' final command. All teams execute terminal assault. End this. Mike took a deep breath, hand hovering over his last resort controls. Sometimes survival depended on being willing to do the one thing your enemy would never expect. The time for defense was over. Mike's finger pressed the final activation sequence. Throughout his failing vessel, emergency systems kicked in, but not to save the boat. Instead, carefully prepared charges detonated in precise locations, breaking his craft apart in controlled sections. Sir, a tactical team leader shouted, target vessel is self-destructing. Anders' voice carried genuine shock. All teams pull back. He's scuttling the boat. But Mike wasn't trying to sink his vessel. Each explosion was carefully calculated, transforming his fishing boat into something else entirely. Sections split apart, revealing hidden compartments and concealed equipment that even Anders didn't know about. What the hell? An operator gasped as panels fell away, exposing military-grade hardware that shouldn't exist outside of classified operations. That's not standard gear. The storm's fury reached its peak as Mike's vessel completed its transformation. Where there had been a simple fishing boat, now there was a collection of tactical platforms, each one armed and prepared for exactly this scenario. You actually did it, Anders' voice carried grudging admiration. "Turned your whole boat into a distributed weapons system. No wonder our intel couldn't get clear readings." Mike moved with practiced efficiency, activating systems that had waited months for this moment. Each section of his former vessel now operated independently, creating a web of floating artillery platforms that surrounded Anders' teams. "All units, fall back," a team leader ordered. "We're surrounded." But the storm made retreat impossible. The same waves that had hindered their attack now trapped them in Mike's kill zone. Professional operators found themselves caught between automated defensive systems and nature's fury. "You taught me well, Anders." Mike's voice carried across all frequencies, breaking through their encrypted communications. "Always have one last surprise. Something the enemy can never anticipate." Through backup thermal imaging, he watched Anders' tactical teams trying to regroup. Their training showed in how quickly they adapted, but they were fighting an environment that had been prepared specifically for this moment. "Impressive," Anders admitted as another wave crashed across his vessel's bow. "Using the storm to mask your boat's transformation, making us focus on defensive systems while hiding your real capabilities." The first counterattack came from 3 directions simultaneously. Automated platforms unleashed precise fire, herding Anders' teams into predetermined zones. Every escape route led to another carefully prepared trap. "Multiple men down." A team leader reported urgently. "Can't maintain tactical formation in these conditions." Mike moved between his distributed platforms, each one providing different capabilities. Some offered cover fire, others electronic warfare, others specialized equipment that turned the storm itself into a weapon. "You were right about one thing," he told Anders, as another team found themselves trapped between automated defenses. "Project Shadowstep was about the future of warfare, but you forgot the most important lesson from our operations." A massive wave crashed across Anders' vessel, its timing too perfect to be natural. Mike's systems weren't just using the storm. They were working with it, turning weather patterns into tactical advantages. "Sometimes the deadliest weapon isn't the most sophisticated," Mike continued, triggering another sequence of coordinated attacks. "Sometimes it's the one that uses the environment itself." Anders' tactical teams fought with professional skill, but they were facing something beyond their training. Every move they made was countered by automated systems or turned against them by the storm's fury. "Sir," an operator called out desperately, "lost contact with teams 3 and 4. The water is like it's working against us." Mike's platforms continued their synchronized assault, each one executing precise attacks that forced Anders' men into increasingly desperate positions. Years of preparation, months of careful planning, all leading to this moment. "This is your last chance, Anders," Mike offered as lightning illuminated the chaos. "Surrender now. End this before I'm forced to show you everything this system can do." Through thermal imaging, he watched Anders consider his options. The colonel's tactical mind would be racing, calculating odds, looking for weaknesses, but this time there was no clever solution. "You really have become better than your teacher," Anders said finally, real respect in his voice. "But you forgot one thing, old friend." Mike's warning sensors screamed as multiple new signatures appeared on his remaining radar, coming in fast and low, running dark until this exact moment. "I always have one last surprise, too." The night was about to become even more interesting. The new contacts emerged from the storm's darkness. Attack helicopters modified for maritime operations. Military hardware that had officially been decommissioned years ago. Anders' final contingency plan. "Impressive toys," Mike observed, watching them take position through his remaining sensors. "But predictable. You always did favor air superiority in tactical scenarios." "Learned that from experience," Anders replied as the helicopters moved into attack formation. "No matter how good the ground force, air support changes everything." Lightning illuminated the scene in stark detail. Anders' patrol vessel at the center, surrounded by Mike's distributed weapons platforms with gunships circling above like modern-day vultures. "You're thinking about Malacca," Anders continued, reading Mike's silence. "How different things might have been if we'd had air support that night. How many of your men might have survived." Mike's fingers moved across emergency controls, reconfiguring his remaining systems. The automated platforms shifted position, adapting to the new threat. "That mission was never meant to succeed," he said finally, understanding dawning. "You needed casualties. Needed to prove conventional forces couldn't handle the new threats you were creating." The helicopters began their attack run, miniguns spinning up. But Mike had prepared for this too. Hidden sensors tracked their approach, calculating firing. Solutions that accounted for wind and wave patterns. Evolution requires sacrifice, and as stated flatly, Project Shadowstep needed real combat data. Your team's performance helped shape the next generation of warfare. The first helicopter opened fire, rounds tracking across Mike's nearest platform. But automated defenses were already responding, forcing the aircraft to break off its attack. "Run! You betrayed everything we stood for!" Mike's voice carried deadly focus. "Turned military hardware against civilian targets, used our own tactics to build a private army." "I created something greater," Anders shot back. "A force unrestrained by politics or bureaucracy. Pure military efficiency." The second helicopter swooped in low, trying to exploit gaps in Mike's defensive coverage, but the storm worked against it, violent updrafts making precise attacks impossible. "Sir!" A pilot's voice carried edge of panic. "These platforms, they're using our own targeting. Protocols against us." Mike allowed himself a grim smile. "Amazing what you can learn from classified data, especially the kind that keeps disappearing from military servers." Through thermal imaging, he watched Anders' posture shift. The colonel was finally realizing just how thoroughly he'd been outmaneuvered. "All those pirate attacks," Mike continued, "ships carrying classified cargo, manifest tubes filled with technical data. I wasn't just tracking them, I was using them to build this." The helicopters made another attack run, but Mike's platforms had already adapted to their patterns. Automated systems predicted their moves, turning their own tactics against them. 2 years planning, Mike said quietly. "Learning your operations, understanding your methods, building exactly what I needed to end this. Even if you stop us," Anders warned, "others will continue the work. Project Shadowstep is too valuable to abandon." Lightning split the sky as Mike triggered his final sequence. Throughout his distributed platforms, hidden systems activated, technology that hadn't existed when Anders was still commanding official operations. "You taught me to always have a backup plan," Mike told his former mentor. "Always be prepared for the worst-case scenario." The helicopter's instruments suddenly screamed warnings. Their own systems were turning against them, automated protocols executing commands they hadn't received. "What have you done?" Anders demanded as his gunships began losing control. "Those manifest tubes you've been collecting?" Mike's voice carried cold satisfaction. "They weren't just carrying technical data, they were delivering very special programming to every piece of military hardware you've stolen." The helicopters wavered, fighting against commands they couldn't override. Anders watched helplessly as his air support was systematically neutralized by their own systems. "Checkmate," Mike said. "Simply, your own tactics, your own protocols, your own stolen equipment, all turned against you." The storm's fury began to fade, as if nature itself recognized the battle was ending. Anders stood on his vessel's bridge, watching his carefully built operation collapse around him. "You really did become better than your teacher," he said finally. "No," Mike corrected. "I just remembered what you forgot. Some lines should never be crossed." The night's final act was about to begin. Dawn broke over the Gulf waters, revealing the night's devastation. Anders' patrol vessel sat dead in the water, its systems completely locked down by Mike's infiltration protocols. Around it, The remains of his distributed platforms bobbed in. The calming seas their purpose served. Coast Guard's 20 minutes out, Sarah reported. Communications finally restored. FBI tactical teams right behind them. They're very interested in the hardware Anders was using. Mike watched through salvaged binoculars as Anders and his surviving men were secured. The colonel's face showed neither anger nor defeat, only a strange pride, as if his former student's victory somehow validated his own legacy. "The manifest tubes?" Mike asked, knowing Sarah would understand. "Decrypting now. They confirm everything. Project Shadowstep, the stolen military hardware, the leaked tactical data." Anders was building something big. Through the morning mist, more vessels appeared on the horizon, official response teams coming to clean up a battle that would never appear in public records. "You knew," Anders called across the water, meeting Mike's gaze. "Knew those tubes were carrying programming that could compromise our systems. Used our own protocols to infiltrate the hardware we'd stolen." "Learned from the best," Mike replied. "Simply, always have a backup plan. Always be prepared for the worst case." Sarah's voice carried grim satisfaction. "FBI's already moving on other Project Shadowstep sites. Anders' operation was huge. Private military hardware, classified tactical data, stolen technology. This will take years to unravel." Mike began salvaging what equipment he could from his platforms. Some of the technology would need to disappear before official forces arrived. Innovations too dangerous to exist in any formal record. "What about the Gulf?" Sarah asked quietly. "Pirates are still operating in these waters. Regular crews still need protection." Mike watched the sunrise paint, the horizon in shades of gold, remembering other dawns after other battles. His fishing boat was gone, but something else had been born in its place. "Think I'll stick around," he said finally. "These waters still need someone watching over them, someone who knows what to look for." Anders managed one final smile as federal agents led him away. "You've become something new," he observed. "Not just a soldier anymore. Not just an operator. Something else entirely." "Someone has to guard the lines," Mike replied. "Make sure no one else tries to build what you almost created." The morning light strengthened as official vessels began securing the scene. But Mike's work wasn't done. Somewhere out there, other operations like Project Shadowstep were taking shape. Other lines were being crossed. "Keep my channel open," he told Sarah, already planning his next move. These waters just got interesting. The Gulf had changed overnight, and Mike Harrison, the operator they once called Reaper, had changed with it. Sometimes the most important victories aren't the ones that make headlines. They're the ones that prevent the next war from starting. The hunt would continue.